Welcome to the Nonfiction Insights channel. Today we're doing a deep dive into Robert Cialdini's influence, the psychology of persuasion.
Ah, classic.
Exact. Let's jump right in with this foundational idea. Automatic influence. Cialdini noticed something interesting, just like, animals have these triggers.
Like a robin attacking a clump of red feathers.
Right. We humans also have these sort of click-whir responses. A specific cue just sets off a predictable behavior almost automatically.
It's like mental shortcuts, right? Our brains are trying to be efficient because there's just so much information bombarding us constantly.
Totally. And Xerox machine study by Langer, that's a perfect example.
Yeah, the copier line.
People were way more likely to let someone cut in line just by adding the word because.
Yeah.
Even if the reason was totally redundant, like...
Because I have to make some copies.
Exactly. It wasn't really the reason itself, but just the word because acting as that trigger.
So the structure of the request mattered more than the substance in a way.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, how often do we just automatically comply because something sounds like a good reason?
We're conditioned to expect a justification after because, so we just kind of nod along.
It's a mental reflex. And then there's that jewelry store example.
The turquoise jewelry that wouldn't sell.
Yeah. It just sat there until the owner mistakenly doubled the price. And then...
flew off the shelves. Because the vacationers, who didn't know much about turquoise, just assumed expensive equals good.
Right. A classic mental shortcut or stereotype. When we lack info, we fall back on these general rules. Price becomes a stand-in for quality.
So the takeaway there is maybe being aware when we're using those rules of thumb instead of really looking at the details.
Definitely, that high price tag might just be a high price tag. Okay, so these automatic responses are powerful. Now let's shift to another huge one. Reciprocation.
The give and take, the obligation to repay.
It's deeply ingrained, isn't it? This social rule that we should pay back what others give us. Think about how weird it feels to just take a favor.
Yeah, you feel indebted. Much obliged literally means you're obligated.
Cialdini mentions that professor who sent Christmas cards to total strangers.
And got a flood of cards back.
Yeah, people felt this obligation to reciprocate even though they had no idea who he was. An unsolicited favor creates this weight.
It shows how automatic that response is, too. It's not always a conscious calculation of value. Just receiving something triggers it.
And think about how the Hare Krishna Society used this early on.
Giving the flower or the book before asking for a donation.
Exactly. You take the gift, and suddenly you feel awkward just walking away. You feel you should give something back.
Even a tiny, unexpected gift dramatically increases compliance. It taps into that need for social balance. Have you ever felt that pull after taking, like, a free sample at the store?
Oh, absolutely. You take the cheese cube, and suddenly you feel like you should at least look at the cheese package, maybe even buy it.
Right. You don't want to seem like you're just taking advantage.
Even that intense story Cialdini tells about the soldier in WWI.
The one who shared his bread with his German captor.
Yeah. And that small act created such a powerful sense of obligation in the captor that he couldn't bring himself to, complete his mission properly with that prisoner.
Wow. That really shows the depth of it. It's not just about stuff. It's about kindness, connection, even in extreme situations.
It's a fundamental social glue, but also a powerful tool for influence. Okay, next principle. Commitment and consistency.
The desire to be and to appear consistent with what we've already done or said.
Once we make a choice or take a stand, we feel this internal and external pressure to behave consistently with that commitment. Nobody wants to be seen as wishy-washy.
Or erratic. Consistency is generally seen as a positive trait, rational, trustworthy.
And Cialdini gives that toy company example around Christmas. It's brilliant in a slightly evil way.
Advertise the heck out of a popular toy.
And deliberately undersupply it before Christmas. Parents promise the kid that toy, can't find it, buy other stuff instead.
But they've made that commitment to their kid.
Exactly. So after Christmas, the company starts advertising the original toy again, the kids see it, and pressure the parents to follow through on the initial promise. Double dip.
Leveraging that initial commitment. Sneaky, but effective. The parents feel bound by that first promise.
It shows how even a commitment made under pressure, like to a pleading child, sets the stage for future action.
And it links to that idea of starting small, right?
Yeah.
The Chinese example with the American POWs during the Korean War.
Yeah, that's a more serious one. Getting prisoners to make very minor anti-American or pro-communist statements, things that seemed insignificant.
Just writing them down, maybe?
Right. Small, seemingly harmless acts. But once they did that voluntarily, it subtly started to change their self-perception. Maybe I do have some sympathy, or maybe the US isn't perfect.
And that initial small commitment opened the door to gradually requesting more significant acts of collaboration. It's the foot in the door technique, but applied to belief systems.
Scary stuff. It makes you think about how small things we agree to might shift our own views over time.
Definitely. And the Friedman and Fraser study reinforces this in a more mundane way.
The drive carefully sign.
Yeah. People were first asked to sign a petition about keeping California beautiful, a small, easy commitment.
Okay, most people would probably do that.
Right. But then, a couple of weeks later, those same people were asked to put a huge, ugly drive carefully sign on their front lawn.
And they were much more likely to agree than a control group who hadn't signed the petition first.
Exactly. That initial small commitment to civic-mindedness apparently changed their self-image enough to make them agree to the much bigger, uglier request later.
Wow. So signing a petition made them see themselves as the kind of person who supports public campaigns.
Seems like it. And public commitments are even stronger, right? Announcing your goal makes you stick to it more.
Oh yeah. Tell everyone you're quitting smoking. Makes it harder to backtrack.
And think about initiation rituals, fraternities, military boot camp. Cialdini argues that the effort and hardship involved actually increases the perceived value of belonging.
Because you've committed so much to get in, you have to believe it's worth it to stay consistent. You value what you had to struggle for.
Exactly. The consistency principle makes you justify the effort.
Yeah.
So yeah, what small commitments are shaping our actions right now? Worth pondering.
Definitely. Okay, let's move to social proof.
Doing what others are doing. Monkey see, monkey do.
Basically, yeah. We figure out what's correct by finding out what other people think is correct, especially when we're uncertain about something.
It's another mental shortcut. If lots of people are doing it, it's probably a safe bet, right? Less risk of making mistake.
Advertisers leverage this constantly. Fastest growing, largest selling.
Implying popularity equals quality or correctness. If everyone else is buying it, you should too.
And those charity telethons. Scrolling the long list of donor names.
That's pure social proof. Look at all these people giving. It must be the right thing to do. It normalizes the behavior.
I remember the example of the discotheque owners creating fake waiting lines outside.
Huh. Yes. Even if the club was half empty inside, the line outside signaled this place is popular and desirable.
Making people want to go in more. The line became the proof of popularity.
Manufactured social proof.
Clever. But social proof has a really dark side, highlighted by the tragic Catherine Genovese story.
The bystander effect, where someone was attacked, many people heard or saw something, but nobody intervened effectively for a long time.
And the reason, counterintuitively, might be the sheer number of witnesses. Everyone assumes someone else will call the police or help.
It's called diffusion of responsibility. In a crowd, personal responsibility gets diluted. Plus, if nobody else looks alarmed, you might assume it's not really an emergency, taking cues from others in action.
So the crucial takeaway for emergencies is reduce uncertainty. Point to a specific person. You in the red jacket, call 911.
Exactly. Don't just yell, somebody help. Make it personal. Assign the task.
And Cialdini notes social proof is even stronger when the people we see doing the behavior are similar to us.
Right. That's why average person testimonials can be so persuasive in ads. We think, hey, they're like me. If it worked for them, maybe it'll work for me.
Makes sense. But this similarity factor can also lead to really disturbing outcomes, like those reported spikes in accidents or suicides after a heavily publicized suicide story.
The Werther effect. It suggests that vulnerable, similar individuals might see suicide as a viable option when they see someone like them has done it. A tragic form of social modeling.
Chilling. And Jonestown. The mass suicide there is often analyzed through the lens of social proof in an isolated, uncertain, high-pressure environment, looking to the leader, looking to each other.
In such extreme ambiguity and under intense pressure from a charismatic leader, people likely relied heavily on observing others for cues on how to act, leading to catastrophic conformity.
It really makes you think about how much we rely on others' actions as a guide, especially when we're unsure.
We do it constantly, often without realizing it. It's baked into our social nature.
Okay, shifting gears again. Liking. Simple principle, big impact.
We prefer to say yes to the requests of people we know and like. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, but why do we like people? Cialdini breaks it down.
Mm-hmm.
Physical attractiveness.
Ooh, yeah. Research shows attractive people often get more favorable treatment in all sorts of situations. The halo effect.
Similarity is another big one. We like people who are like us, shared opinions, background, even dress style.
Compliments work too, even if we suspect they might be insincere sometimes. We tend to like people who flatter us.
And cooperation. Working together towards a common goal builds bonds.
Absolutely. All these factors create positive feelings, making us more susceptible to influence from the person we like.
Salespeople are trained in this stuff, right? Finding common ground, mirroring body language.
Oh yeah, building rapport. Mirroring and matching, subtly adopting the customer's posture, gestures, speech patterns creates a subconscious feeling of similarity and connection.
Makes them like you more, trust you more.
Exactly. And the good cop, bad cop technique. That plays directly on liking and contrast.
Right. The bad cop is aggressive, threatening. Then the good cop steps in, seems understanding, maybe offers a coffee.
Seems like your ally, someone on your side, compared to the nasty bad cop. This contrast makes the suspect feel rapport and trust towards the good cop, making them more likely to confess.
Clever manipulation of liking. So Cialdini's warning is crucial. Be wary if you find yourself liking someone way more than you'd expect, especially in a short time, especially if they're trying to sell you something.
Ask yourself, do I like this person or just the deal they're offering? Try to separate the messenger from the message.
Good advice. Think about the merits of the offer itself, independent of how charming the salesperson is. Have you ever bought something just because you really like the person selling it?
Probably. It's hard to resist sometimes. Okay, next up, authority.
The power of perceived authority figures. We're taught from childhood to obey parents, teachers, police.
It's generally functional for society, right? Order depends on following legitimate authority, but the response can become automatic.
Dangerously automatic, as the Milgram experiment showed.
Oh, absolutely. Those were stunning. People administering supposedly painful electric shocks just because a guy in a lab coat told them to.
Even when the learner was screaming in agony, it showed a frightening willingness to obey authority, even against one's own conscience.
The power of the situation and the perceived legitimacy of the authority figure was immense.
And it's not just real authority, the symbols of authority work too. Titles.
Doctor, professor, judge. Uniforms, expensive business suits.
Even trappings like fancy cars. These things can trigger our deference, even if the person doesn't actually have relevant expertise.
We use them as cues, shortcuts to judge credibility, like assuming someone in a well-tailored suit knows what they're talking about regarding finance.
That bank examiner scam Cialdini describes plays right into this. Con artists using official-sounding titles and maybe a uniform?
Right, tricking people into withdrawing money because they look and sound like legitimate authority figures. It exploits that automatic trust.
So Cialdini suggests asking two critical questions. First, is this authority truly an expert in this area?
Verify their credentials, don't just rely on the symbols.
Second, how truthful can we expect this expert to be? Do they have anything to gain by persuading us?
Considering their potential biases or conflicts of interest, are they giving impartial advice or selling something?
He also mentions a sneaky tactic. Compliance pros might seem to argue against their own interests on a small point.
Ah, yes. Like a waiter suggesting a slightly cheaper dish, it builds trust. Makes them seem honest and objective.
So when they then strongly recommend the expensive wine, you're more likely to believe them.
Exactly. Establishing trustworthiness makes the main pitch more effective. Smart, but manipulative.
Okay, last principle. Scarcity.
Things are more attractive when their availability is limited. We want what we might not be able to get.
Classic limited time offer. Or only 3 left in stock.
Creates urgency. Plays on our fear of missing out FOMO. If we don't act now, the opportunity will be gone forever.
And this isn't just about things being rare. It's also about losing freedoms we already have. That's psychological reactance.
Right. When something is forbidden or taken away, we often want more. Tell a teenager they can't date someone.
Suddenly that person becomes irresistible. The Romeo and Juliet effect. Parental interference actually strengthens the attraction.
The desire to assert our freedom and autonomy kicks in.
Censorship can have a similar effect, right? Banning a book or information often just makes people more interested in it and more inclined to believe it.
Definitely. The forbidden fruit effect. Scarcity enhances perceived value and desirability.
That beef importer story is interesting, too. Sales were okay, but when he told his customers that, due to weather or whatever, future supplies were likely to be scarce, and that this was exclusive information.
Orders went through the roof. The scarcity, especially newly scarce items, and scarcity due to social demand made the beef seem much more valuable.
But here's the crucial point Cialdini makes. Scarce things aren't necessarily better. Scarce cookies don't actually taste better just because there are fewer of them.
Exactly. The pleasure is often in the possession of the scarce item, not necessarily its utility or quality.
So when you feel that urgency rising because something is scarce, pause, ask yourself, do I want this thing for its actual function or just because it's hard to get?
Decouple the desire, triggered by scarcity, from the item's actual merit. Do you need it, or just want it because it's rare?
Great point. So recapping this deep dive, understanding these principles, reciprocation, commitment consistency, social proof, liking, authority, and scarcity is really key.
It equips you to recognize when these tactics are being used on you, or even when you might be using them unconsciously yourself.
Right. Being aware of those click were automatic responses, the power of small commitments, how much we look to others, the influence of liking someone, our deference to authority, and that pull of scarcity.
Awareness is the first step towards making more conscious, deliberate choices, rather than just reacting automatically.
As you go about your week, maybe try to spot these principles in action. Advertising, news reports, interactions with salespeople, even conversations with friends or colleagues.
Yeah, where do you see reciprocation being used? What commitments are influencing behavior? Whose authority are people deferring to? What seems valuable just because it's scarce?
It's fascinating once you start looking for it. This is just scratching the surface, really. But hopefully it gives you some tools for navigating the world of influence a bit more wisely.
Keep observing, keep questioning. That's the core of understanding these powerful psychological forces.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you for joining us for this Nonfiction Insights deep dive. Please subscribe to the Nonfiction Insights channel for more explorations into the ideas that shape our world.